Hello and welcome. I'm Joe Holbrook, cloud consulting architect, technical trainer, crypto enthusiast, and also a trader as well. So, also certified Bitcoin professional from C4. So, let's go ahead and get started here. So, the goal of this session, we're going to be about 30 to 40 minutes or so in there. And the goal is to get you pretty familiar with what Dash is, what a blockchain is. We're going to compare Bitcoin versus Dash. We'll also talk about the master nodes and we'll talk about development briefly. And then we'll talk about buying Dash as well, and then talk about some of the challenges. So, for example, every cryptocurrency is going to have its pros and it's going to have its cons. So, for example, if if you want privacy, Dash is the way to go. Again, it's going to be hard to beat Dash right now. Of course, Zcash does have some benefits to it, but you're not going to get that with Bitcoin unless if you get a third-party solution to use with it. So we'll talk more about some of the pros and cons. So brief introduction here. So I'm based out of Jacksonville, Florida. I'm the owner of Cloudburst and Corp. I'm mainly focused around cloud architecture, cloud data engineering, mainly focused Google, Amazon. I'm also an Amazon Web Services consulting partner. Been in the business for about 15 years or so between cloud computing, data storage, and a Unix background, more or less. I'm also a cryptocurrency consultant, active cryptocurrency investor, excuse me, as well as a technical trainer. I'm actually going to be releasing a couple courses on cryptocurrencies here pretty shortly. And I do have a history with military communications, IT security as well. And finally, I'm mainly focused around Dash, Ethereum, Ripple, and Bitcoin. So quick disclosure before we get going. So just to confirm, I'm a cryptocurrency investor. So what that means is I'm giving you sort of my approach, what I think of the cryptocurrency, nothing more. I don't have a stake in this in the sense that I'm being paid by anyone to do this. I'm doing this because I'm a fan of Dash. I'm a fan of Bitcoin. I'm a fan of the blockchain like Ethereum, etc. So just giving you my opinion. I'm hoping that it can help some of you out when you start making your decisions to look at what cryptocurrency you might want to look at. I just released about, I think, a week ago a short presentation on Ethereum. So feel free to take a look at that on my YouTube channel. So I want everybody to be successful with this. So I'm not giving it any advice. So don't, in the sense that you should do this and you'll make money. That's not the goal of this. I want to just make sure you understand the technical merits and some of the investing merits as well of each of the cryptocurrencies that I cover in my YouTube channel. So as far as Dash, before we talk about what Dash is, I think it's really important that you have a baseline on what a blockchain is. So a blockchain is essentially a globally shared data structure. Now, this is important because this is essentially a ledger is what it is. So if you've got a database background, used to be an Oracle DBA, you already get what this is. This is not going to be hard to understand. Now, ledger is essentially metadata. That's really what it is. So basically, if you think of it this way, you've got to have a way to keep track of the transactions, who's doing what, when, know if Sally, deposited money, or know if Frank, sent money out, for example. So that's what the blockchain does. It's a way to create a ledger, essentially. Now, this is not like currency, so don't confuse blockchain as currency. This is the network essentially that the currency is going to run on. So just make sure, don't, because I've had a lot of questions about what a blockchain is, and you know, everybody thinks that Ether, for example, not everyone, but a fair number of people at first, if you don't understand the technical merits of Ethereum, then you might get confused over Ethereum actually being the coins, the currency, which it is not. So Ether is actually what you're paying for to develop a DApp essentially in Ethereum. So when we talk about Dash, it is important to understand that it is built on a blockchain, and that blockchain is eerily similar to what Bitcoin uses. Now, a blockchain, the goal of the blockchain is essentially to validate transactions, to keep track of the transactions, to basically be a source where you're going to have different nodes try to write to different blocks. And one of the things about having multiple nodes is you always have that issue of, is it possible to have multiple nodes try to write the same block at the same time? Absolutely, unless if you've got the blockchain set up to where that can't happen. And this is called non-repeatable. So basically, once you write it, it's written. So you can't alter it. So basically, that block, again, the goal of this course is not to get too deep into a blockchain. I could spend like literally probably 2 hours talking about the blockchain and whiteboarding it with you, but essentially it's a network where the transactions are going to be monitored, kept track of, essentially. The last thing is that it's going to be time-stamped and you'll have a full history. Okay, so why are we here? Let's talk about what Dash is. Now, Dash is essentially digital cash. That's basically what you want to know at a high level of what it is. It's digital cash. Now, of course, that's not good enough. Let's go ahead and expand on that definition. So Dash actually came out of an open source project, and that was originally called Darkcoin or Xcoin. And the founder of Dash, or actually Darkcoin, etc., actually was really concerned about some of the challenges that Bitcoin had. And so one of the things that Bitcoin just did not do well was governance, for example, and scaling as well was also a concern. Also, major concerns around having a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, and we'll talk more about that as well. And that's where the master nodes are going to come in. So pretty interesting technology. Now, Dash uses a proof of work algorithm. It's basically chained hashing is what it's called. It's X11,000 gig hash. And I'll also touch on when we get to some of the resources to look at that on the roadmap. This will likely become more of a proof of stake algorithm down the road in different versions, possibly. Again, there is a roadmap for that as well, and we'll talk more about that. Dash uses a two-tier network, so this is actually pretty cool. Bitcoin is a single tier. And again, if you have a single tier network versus a dual tier network, again, limitations can be construed fairly easily. Now, currently, it's hosted on over 4,100 servers. Actually, it's probably more like 4,600 now, actually, and I'll show you how you find that out. One of the things I've noticed, even the last week or so, the number of nodes, master nodes, for example, has gone up. It would almost appear like 100 a day. So it looks like people are really jumping on board with this. And I'll talk about scalability as well. It's a pretty interesting approach, I think Evan and his team thought of here. So before we talk about Dash a little bit more, I want to make sure that you understand some terminology that Dash generally uses. So master nodes. Now this is very different than Bitcoin. So if you know Bitcoin, you know what a miner is. Well, a miner and Dash is essentially the same thing. A master node, though, in Dash is unique. There is no master node in Bitcoin for that matter. So this may be a new term, again, to the Bitcoin professionals out there. So this is actually probably, in my opinion, the number one differentiator, at least from a technical perspective. That's just my thought. Now, if you listen to some other folks on YouTube as well, or conferences, you'll see everybody's got a little bit different opinion. But for me, that two-tier network really does add the scalability as well as the what I would call the enhancements, basically the instant send and the private send I'm going to talk about here in a minute. Now, a master node, again, is going to be a node that you're going to put on the Dash blockchain, essentially, that is going to essentially monitor the miners, essentially. And so this is actually a pretty unique approach. What's good about a master node, though, is that as a master node, generally the master nodes to participate, you're going to have to fulfill certain requirements. And some of those would be having 1,000 Dash. I'll talk more about that actually when we get to the master node section here in a few minutes. A miner essentially is the same in Bitcoin, not significantly different. Again, a miner is going to try to solve problems. And the goal is to solve problems and essentially get reimbursed for solving problems, to be able to write blocks essentially. So again, this is part of taking a problem, trying to manage a transaction, come up with the right answer to be able to complete that mining exercise essentially. Now, Treasury is going to be a little bit different than what you may think. Bitcoin really doesn't have any kind of Treasury, so there's no real comparison. So Treasury, when we talk about Dash, it's important to understand this is sort of the business part of Dash. This is, again, pretty unique. From a business perspective, personally, I feel like it gives Dash a more professionally managed look, at least on the surface. I don't know the exact details per se of how it really is working out, if you know if you actually work in Dash and if that actually is working like the way they say it is. But it looks like it is, and it looks like a great idea. And I'm going to talk about how coins are mined and how the treasury is funded. Now, the treasury, the purpose of the treasury is essentially multifaceted. So if you think about it, Bitcoin actually does not get any support, really. So when coins are mined in Bitcoin, all that money goes to the miners. So there's no funding that actually goes for governance, and the treasury provides that in Dash. It also provides some other nice capabilities around like marketing. So for example, if you go to the Dash.org website, you could submit a proposal. Let's say you want to do marketing for Dash. Put in a proposal, put in how much you want to get paid per month. The master nodes will, of course, vote on that. Remember, we spoke about voting. And I'll talk more about this because master nodes, you need certainly 20 minutes to talk effectively about them. And the treasury, again, is going to be where the funding comes from. So this is a big deal. This is very different than Bitcoin, because if you're a developer in Bitcoin, you're working for free basically. If you're a developer for Dash, then you're getting paid at least Dash for your time. So that is a pretty cool idea. Now, there's two other names here, or features. These are actually features in Dash. One is called Instant Send and the other is called Private Send. Instant Send is pretty slick in the sense that, let's say, so if you've ever sent a Bitcoin, whether it's from Kraken, or Coinbase or whoever you may be using, you'll know that sending a Bitcoin is not instantaneous no matter how you send it. And at best, it may be 3 or 4 minutes in most cases, maybe a little bit sooner, but it could take 10, 15, 20 minutes or a couple hours. And a lot of that is going to be based on the network load. And with Instant Send and Dash, you have the ability to sort of say, hey, I really want this money in less than a minute, actually in a couple seconds. They say about 15 seconds, which, again, a lot of variables there. A lot of it is going to depend on the network and who where you're sending it from and who you're sending it to, but also could also be your configuration in your mobile app or your browser could also affect it as well. Refreshing the screen could also be part of that as well. But in general, it's very fast. In other words, definitely under a minute, under 30 seconds in most cases. And so if you want to pay a little bit extra, what you're doing essentially is you're prioritizing the transaction. So you say, hey, you know what, I really want this sent now. Go ahead, all miners, masternodes, wake up. I'm here. I want these funds transferred, from the U.S. to China immediately, wherever you're sending it to, and that's pretty great capability. So that you don't have to wait for a transaction confirmation. This is a good deal. Now, I was also reading, this is sort of interesting. I was reading that about 60% of the transactions in Dash are actually sent with Instant Send. And so I found that pretty interesting in the sense that people are willing to pay a little bit more on top of what is already a really fast platform to send their funds. So pretty neat. Private Send. Now, this is another cool capability, especially if, well, I won't say why, but you could think of a few reasons why, where you might want to send some Dash, funds essentially to someone and not be traced or tracked. So Private Send, again, but just like Instant Send, it's going to use the master node, and again, we'll talk more about both of these on the master node, in the sense that the master nodes do provide, other functions, of course, but this is one of the important ones, is that they're going to attend to these premium solutions. So Private Send, if you want to go ahead and send funds and not have to be tracked in the ledger, essentially, in the blockchain, this will be a good option. So, and we'll talk more about that. Okay. So let's talk about the definition of Dash a little bit more. So the coin supply is limited to about 22 million. The protocol itself is self-funded and self-governed. This is, again, very different than Bitcoin. So in Bitcoin, it's pretty much whatever goes, whatever the founders of Bitcoin so choose. That tight-knit group is going to go. That's how they're going to govern. And the funding is sort of, there's no real dedicated source of funding essentially in Bitcoin. So this is, again, a challenge, I think, for Bitcoin to deal with. Another area too that I think is important to talk about when we talk about Bitcoin versus Dash, actually, but I'll touch on it now, is the fee structure. It is somewhat more expensive to send money in Bitcoin than it is in Dash, certainly from what I have seen and what I have been reading as well. Now, Dash was, as of the 21st of April, is considered the 4th most valuable digital currency. So this is actually pretty important because the volume of Dash, as well as the number of transactions, etc., we'll go through, but this is a big deal. They sort of came from out of nowhere. In a few months, they're like number 7. Now they're number 4. So the question is are they going to get to number 3, number 2? Where are they going to go from here? Voters. Now, voters basically are the master nodes. So if you have 1,000 Dash, you could go set up a master node right now, assuming that the threshold hasn't been reached for the maximum number of master nodes, which as of yesterday has not. So still room to grow or room for people to join on. Now, 1,000 Dash in today's market is going to be about $70,000. So let's talk about what is the difference between Bitcoin and Dash. Now, I highly recommend, before you so choose, to invest in any currency, to basically purchase Dash or Bitcoin or Ripple, Ethereum, whatever, to go to coinmarketcap.com. And the reason is because you're going to be able to do a comparison like this against the different cryptocurrencies, and it'll give you updated information. Very good website on the cryptocurrencies. I can't speak more than well enough about it. So great resource, and the managers of the site definitely go out of their way to make sure things are updated, it would appear. So, excuse me. Now, when we talk about price, if you notice that Bitcoin is about 1,200, Dash is about 70. I'm not going to read all of these. I'm going to point out a few things that I think is interesting. Coin supply cap, 21 million versus 22 million. Now, Bitcoin is at about 16 million now, so they've got about maybe 4.5 or 4.75 of a million coins available. Dash has actually about plus or minus a few hundred, about 14 million available. So big difference there. You can see that Bitcoin started in 2009. Dash started in 2014. So again, Dash is sort of the baby here. But you have to just realize in just about 2 years or so, or a little bit over, almost 3 years actually, by the time I do this, actually, they've come a long way. So definitely pretty impressive, in my opinion. Founder, Evan Duffield. Now, Evan Duffield, if you do some research on him, he was originally in the Bitcoin camp. Developer, did a lot of great stuff with Bitcoin, and he saw a lot of challenges with Bitcoin. That's how he came about with Dash. At least that's the official story. Coin supply is fixed. Now, this is actually important because if you have a supply that's fixed, that means that the supply, is essentially is not going to be inflated, unlike the U.S. dollar. So, no pun intended there, unlike any other fiat currency, actually. So this is important because what should happen is that there should be appreciation over time for these currencies. So we should not see a lot of per se inflation in the number of coins that are supplied. That should not happen according to generally the charter of these currencies. CoinSite is there, GitHub. Now this is interesting too. Transactions per 24 hours. So you can see Bitcoin does about 2.78 million in 24 hours. That's the number of transactions. It's not the total amount. And Dash does 187. So this is pretty big difference, right? What I thought was interesting, and I also didn't do it just for Dash, but also for a couple other cryptocurrencies. What was interesting was the average amount of the transaction, right, was still higher in Bitcoin than any other cryptocurrencies. And I think a lot of that has to do with the average approach that they use. So, for example, if you're in China and you want to go ahead and send money to Canada to buy that overinflated house, and do that so that the Chinese government doesn't stop you or tax you to death or whatever they do to you. Whack you with chickens, I don't know. But and no pun intended there. But if you've been reading about like what's been going on with uh, Bitcoin in China, they've got some challenges as far as keeping control of their currency, the RMB there. So no joke intended here for my friends overseas, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. So if you're trying to send money, I mean, trying to minimize the cost and also trying to keep it so that there's no currency controls in place, Bitcoin is definitely the way to go, especially if you're in China, for example. Now, why are they not using Dash? A lot of that is because Dash is newer. It's not well adapted. And I'm not actually totally sure if it's been totally validated or approved to be used in China. I know that it can be traded in China. I didn't totally understand the articles that I read if you have to actually go through Taiwan to do it. That's what it seemed like. So again, I'll leave that for another day. Now, what is interesting though is if you've got folks wiring money or sending via Bitcoin, three, four, five, $700,000 to buy a house in Vancouver, that's going to jack up the number of not the number of transactions, but the average amount of the transactions. So pretty cool in that sense. Now, that doesn't mean folks are not using Dash for larger purchases as well. Again, between the volume and the number of transactions, it's pretty blatant what the larger transactions are being used with. Mining. Now, for those folks interested in mining, I am actually working on some material around that. It's going to be a little while before I finish it up. But there's also some great videos on YouTube of folks that are well ahead of it in that area than I am. But what I found interesting around mining is with Bitcoin now, it's almost not profitable to mine with Bitcoin. And there's a lot of factors for that. A lot of it just comes down to the economics because when you have more and more miners, mining nodes competing for a transaction, the cost, goes down essentially, and therefore the profits for the miners goes down as well. So you've got basically, a little bit more competition. Now with Dash, they do it a little different. They of course want to make sure that people, stay invested with Dash, and so the approach that they use is somewhat a little bit different, but similar in some ways as well. So I'll go into that when I get into the mining section. But I did want to make a note here. If you see here, the blocker rewards. This is the reward that the miner gets for solving a problem. That's called proof of work. Proof of work is in the sense that you were able to solve a problem if you're a miner. So you have a transaction and you solve the problem to complete the transaction. You get to prove that you did the work. And if you do that, if all the other nodes agree, great, you get your reward, which is 12.5 coins or so. The value of that is about $15,000 right now. So even though that sounds like a lot, you have to understand that a lot of the nodes are just waiting around and not actually doing anything in that sense. And the power to run the specialized ASICs and GPUs, again, is not cheap also. So again, look more into that if that's of interest to you. Now, Dash, you get about 1.8 coins. Works out to about $127. So let's go ahead and wrap up the difference between Bitcoin and Dash here. So Bitcoin and Dash, they are actually blockchain-based systems. The goal is to transmit a transaction or transmit value digitally. Bitcoin is a digital currency on the Bitcoin network, and Dash is going to use coins as well. Now, Dash is also open source peer-to-peer. Again, we had already spoke that it's Darkcoin originally. Now, Dash is essentially an updated copy of Bitcoin. So what I mean by that is, again, when I was saying Evan decided, hey, I've been working with Bitcoin for a while. He looked at Bitcoin and realized that there were some challenges around decentralization, around governance. And they took the Bitcoin platform essentially and made it better. That's sort of really what they did. So development in Bitcoin is generally uncompensated. So if you're a developer working on Bitcoin, you get it. You're working for free basically. Dash, on the other hand, you could submit a proposal and get compensated for working on the Dash platform. So again, this is pretty good. So the difference is self-reliant or not self-reliant. So again, self-reliant is more focused around Bitcoin, and not being self-reliant is more focused around Dash. Now, mining rewards. So they're going to be different in the sense of, actually they're different in several ways. Not only the amount, but also how the rewards are distributed. Now, Bitcoin, basically all the rewards go to the miners. So the ones that have the GPUs, that have the tens of thousands of dollars invested, are getting the rewards. They also have amazing power bills too. But again, they're getting all the rewards. But what about the developers? What about marketing? What about other folks that want to help the cause? Well, guess what? They don't get anything in Bitcoin. But in Dash, they're shared. So we'll go through how that's distributed here in a minute. Bitcoin does not reward long-term investment, but Dash, the goal of that is to be focused on long-term investment. So Dash Network, they want you to be invested, and they also want it to be profitable for you as well. Because again, we all understand that you have to make money. Those bills don't pay themselves. Bitcoin is a single tier network. Dash is a multiple tier network. So when we talk about master nodes, I'll go more into the network structure, but basically Bitcoin is single tier. Everything works off of that blockchain. Um, all the nodes are located on that single tier. Whereas in the multiple tier network in Dash, you have the master nodes on the upper tier, and then you have the miners on the secondary tier. Bitcoin does not provide anonymity, and I know I said that totally wrong, and looks like I might have spelt that wrong too. So pass on that one. So anonymity is very important. Now, Dash, again, the feature or the service that you want to look at is called Privacy Protect. Pretty slick product, especially if you want to send something and not be traced, essentially. Transactions in Bitcoin is slow. Yes, that is true. I don't know how many times I sent Bitcoin, and you sort of wonder if it ever is going to get there. So, you wouldn't want to use Bitcoin at the checkout in Starbucks. That's for darn sure. Dash, on the other hand, is much quicker. Even if you don't use the instant send, it is still very fast. Now, Dash Core, this is essentially the development platform, the open source software that you're going to use. Now, the GitHub directory is here for the roadmap, actually is there. Take a minute to look at it. For the purposes of this demo, I want to keep on time and keep you around 40 minutes or at the most. So master nodes. Now, master nodes, this is really the brainchild here, I think, of Dash. Master nodes provide great functions. They're the backbone essentially to the network. Master nodes are incentivized. What that means is that they're rewarded also, and that they have voting capability as well, and we'll talk about voting here in a second. It enables decentralized governance. Master nodes also enable new features. What's interesting, though, with the master nodes is that with the two-tier approach, it enables developers to have more flexibility as well. And again, I'll do a separate demo with the development features and functions and resources. Master nodes, again, have voting rights. This is important. So the way Dash looks at it is if you're going to invest 1,000 Dash, then we want to give you some voting rights on proposals, some part in the governance structure, essentially. Pretty interesting approach, I have to say. So here's the block reward structure. Master nodes, they get about 45% of the reward. Miners get 45%. And then 10% goes back into the governance, the proposals. That's the budget, also known as the treasury. So treasury is the budget. That's essentially where the funding comes from to pay the developers, to pay for governance, for audits, marketing. So this is what enables the proof of service. Master nodes run on controlled hardware. And for those that are interested, you can go ahead and go to the Dash website and select master nodes. There's several service providers that you go ahead and select and look at what you could do to set up a master node. It's essentially cloud computing that you could use to do that. Master nodes must run approved software, and they enable a safer network and enables price stability. So the way they look at it is if someone's going to invest, essentially in this case right now, $70,000, that you should have some kind of voting rights, that you have an interest in keeping things safe, secure. You're not going to do anything that's going to jeopardize your investment. So pretty interesting thought, in my opinion. Return on investment is over here. So you could see, for example, I've seen different numbers, but the last one is about 8%. I've seen it up to 14%. Masternode limit. So basically, you can only have 57 total master nodes. Right now, there's 4,400 or so. So there's still room for another, 1,300 or so. There's still time to get on board and be part of that. To run a master node, I just pulled this from the dash.org site. There's a couple links you go to that'll pull this up. Dash info, Dash Ninja also has resources there too. But if you notice here, it says 4,481. That's the current number of master nodes. Maximum number so far has been 4,485. This is sort of interesting because it only looks like only 4 nodes have been offline. So that's pretty good. And you can see the growth here as well. But again, I just go to the dash.org site and you can find this pretty easily. Now, this is, you'll go to the dashboard here. I'm going to do a separate demo on this as well so that you could see that. But you go here and you can see the master node information here. Current cost is about $70,000, like I had said. The ROI currently would be about 8.5%. So you could see the earnings per day would be about $16 a day. Per week is that. This is the chart that you could pull that shows you the current locations of master nodes. You can see that it's pretty dense in Europe. Matter of fact, it's very dense in Europe and on the east coast of the US as well. So lastly, what are some of the challenges that I think that for me I think is important to talk about? So as with any other cryptocurrency, it's pretty important to understand the pros and cons. What are the risks? What are some of the concerns that you may have, or what I in this case here, what do I think are some of the concerns? So one of the challenges I think again is around Dash itself. So to invest in Dash, you need to have 1,000 Dash. So that 1,000 Dash is essentially being held hostage with the master nodes. So if you go back here, actually let me go back to the previous slides. So if you think about it, the current cost is 70,000. That's for 1,000 Dash. So if you have over here currently 4,481, you multiply that by 1,000. That is the number of Dash that is essentially in escrow, I guess would be a good way to look at it. It's there. You can't spend it. You can't use it. If you do, it's not held, in lock. In other words, you could still, let's say you need your 1,000 Dash, but if you take out, you go below 1,000 Dash, then guess what? You basically shut down your master node and you don't get paid. So not really a good thing. So Dash will only allow up to 5,700 master nodes. Like I said, we're at about 44 or so hundred. So for example, you have 4,400 nodes, let's say in this case, times 1,000. That's 4.4 million Dash. Now, out of 4.5 million, the total supply, remember in that comparison, only 22 million coins. So that's a good percentage of coins that are actually, not in the pool. So if you think about it, that is definitely restricting some of the coins. So that's a pretty significant total. So that's almost what, if you look at it, 20, around 20%. And that's based on the total coin cap. Now, if we take the 4,400 and we, actually look at what the current values are, that actually might get a little bit tighter. So I'll skip over that for now. But again, just think of it this way. So that's a concern because again, when you are taking coins out of circulation, that is going to, of course, make those coins unusable. But on the other hand, I think it adds benefits too, in the sense that you do um, reduce the available coins that are out there. So that should theoretically increase the value or help reduce number of coins available, and that hopefully should drive up some of the value of the coin. Again, think of it however you want, but that's sort of my thought. Another challenge is around the block size. So currently it's at 1 meg typically, but it can be increased to 2 meg through sharding essentially. Now, again, this will increase the number of transactions to about 1,000 transactions per second, which is pretty impressive. But it's also, if you do that, then the challenge will be to the miners. Their profitability will go down because they're going to have to do more work and require more resources. Again, if you have more transactions, you're increasing the block size. Guess what happens? You need more storage. You need more CPU. So again, this could cause some issues with the miners. Now, inflation. So again, what happens if you add too many coins? What happens if you expand the pool? This could be a concern as well. Right now it's fixed, but who knows what happens down the road. And then Evan, I guess my thought is, I think he's a very smart guy. I've read some things, and there's also a YouTube video on him as well at an open house, and again, he confirmed that he was high, basically. So if you're an investor, and this is on Reddit, I'm not going to put the link to it, but he confirmed that, yeah, I was having a good time and, had a little too much or whatever. But, again, if you're an investor, and you're talking to, the guy running the show, essentially, that might be a concern as well. Just my thought. Okay, buying and trading Dash. Now, there's numerous exchanges you go ahead and buy Dash off of. You go to dash.org/exchanges. The wallet, if you've already used a Bitcoin wallet, like the Bitcoin Core, it's really the same thing. They just basically made it look prettier and add some enhancements. Allcoin, Kraken, Polynex, Shapeshift. Those are some other places you could take a look. But again, plenty of good exchanges. If you're in South America, you've got the Inca exchange as well that you could use. But there's at least, it looked like 30 or 40 exchanges that are there. I did not have time to go through them all. I personally use Kraken at this point, but there's also numerous others as well. Current price of Dash is about $72. Again, you could go ahead and validate that. Go to CoinGecko as well. There's many different resources you go, but this one here is from CoinGecko. Well, I wanted to thank everyone. Happy investing. Any questions, please do reach out. And do look forward to the demo that I'll be posting in the next day or so as well. Thank you again. Please do reach out if I could be of assistance. Happy trading.